Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the SWAN Pricing Show. My name is Filip Fucic. I'm a pricing mentor.
And I'm Filip Zolota. I am the CEO and the owner of growth marketing agency Mojo.
So, today we're going to talk about something that could sound contentious, which is why the margin doesn't really matter. And I mean, I'm a business major, okay? I've been taught that margin matters always, right? However, this is much more the case for commodities and commoditized services, the cases that we call duck cases on this show, right? So commonly, yes, you really need the price to be higher than the costs because that's the margin. However, when we're talking about expertise-based businesses, or what we here call the SWAN case, it's actually the secondary thing, because it's going to be solved by the virtue of you looking at what does it what's the relationship between the price and the value, not the price and the cost. And let me illustrate this for a second. Right. So very basic, you have the price, it has to be higher than the cost and lower than the value for the client. Otherwise, nobody would buy, right? Now, the margin is this area. It's how much higher is the price than the cost. However, we in this case, I think the main idea is to look the difference between the value and the price, because margin tells you how good of an idea it is to sell this service, but this relationship shows you how good of an idea it is to buy this service. So the danger here is basically saying, well, you know, $27 per customer is a perfect figure, because I have, I don't know, 23 to minimally $20 of cost per customer, so 27 covers everything and it gives me a nice fat margin, right? However, if you look at what you're doing for the customer, you see that you're actually giving them an alternative to spending $200. So by using the cost plus method, you set the price way too low, maybe even suspiciously low, because if somebody comes up to the street in the street and says, look, give me $27, I'll give you back 200, he would be like, no, go away. So in this kind of a scenario, okay, don't set the price at 200, set the price at 100, and still you're going to have a very healthy margin, right? But it makes no sense to simply look at this and say, oh yeah, this is a good idea to sell, because you might miss that the price is actually higher than the value. And then you're not going to, despite the theoretical margin being very, very healthy, you're going to overshoot this and nobody will want to buy it. So the point here is not that you should never pay attention to the margin. It's just that it's not the primary thing. The primary thing is the incentive to buy. And if that's settled, usually, especially for individuals, for self-employed people or solopreneurs, the margin is going to sort itself out, right? So I wanted to ask you, how different does this look for an agency, right? You employ people. I don't.
Okay. Quite often you'll see the cost-based plus methodology being fully implemented, which is wrong. It's selling and buying bananas. It's problematic because you've set up some predetermined and predefined margin, and there is a big gap between, as you mentioned, through an actual value which you create in the generative for the respectable client and customer compared to your price. So there is still a lot of agencies which are implementing the cost-based plus methodology, and it is okay, but only so much and so far, because there is a great potential in implementing value-based pricing, result-based principle, and that is also a portion of that, because
Oh yeah.
that is important. You are able to fully not only explore but to hit adequate gain compared to value based on knowledge, experience, and expertise and results you generate for respectable clients and customers. Also, what I wanted to touch on is the fact that still a lot of companies, especially agencies, are making big mistakes in cost-based plus methodology and approach. They're not embedding into the calculation all relevant parameters in terms of redundancies, savings, etc., etc., etc. So even their good profit margins aren't the real ones. So practically they're doing their job only to cover the business, and there is no serious and healthy scaling there. You cannot scale on the market or go international if you are somewhere practically being nowhere between the lines and you don't have the asset, the resources to expand it in terms. So I'm a big advocate on value-based pricing, result-based. That is the way we are doing things, and our majority of profits are being directly gained through value we've created for our clients and customers. The same thing and the same practice I have in my coaching and consulting practice, because I found that that is the ideal case and scenario for conducting serious business. And that is something which I advocate and which I always suggest to solopreneurs, business owners, no matter people are employing others or they don't have employees. The system and approach is pretty much similar there.
Yeah. So okay. I also have seen then, you know, cost plus, which is sometimes too unprofitable or has nothing to do with the results, and then people pad. Then people say, oh yeah, it will totally take me 3 weeks to do this. It would take you 3 days, but in order to get some actual profits out of it, you masquerade it as cost plus, and then sooner or later something happens, and it matters when something is done, and then you do about the equal amount of work in 3 days, and then the client says, hey, that's something wrong here. Either you shouldn't have been able to do this, or you should have been able to do that before, and now you're getting paid less for this for the same amount of work as before. It all devolves, right? Massively devolves. Also, of course, when you're an agency, you can have different people charged to the client at different rates, right? That we talked about formulas before. That opens the whole can of worms of, oh, well, couldn't that guy have done this? You know, then I would pay less. And also, I've seen a case. I've heard about those, but I've also seen a case for developers. It was a developer for hire agency. They basically lost money on their best people, and they got the most money on the complete beginners that began like last week.
Yeah.
So complete juniors, because the senior is firstly more costly in paycheck sense, but secondly, he's like 60 times faster.
Yeah.
Right, and he doesn't create additional problems to be charged for later, and you cannot charge him 60 times more. You can charge 3 times more. That's still a huge loss, right? So it once we did the analysis, I had to go and provide the client with a anti-headache medicine because it doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely.
And so and yes, cost plus does not make any sense in the SWAN pricing environment.
Yeah.
It's an unnatural plant, and it completely does make sense in some business cases, just not in ours.
Yeah.
Just expertise-based services, right?
Yeah. And I have one addition, just to mention.
Yeah.
Before I forgot, it's not bashing the agencies. I am the agency owner, and I work with agencies. I am partnering up with agencies, consulting agencies, whatever. The
I'm
point
sorry.
is how they are fixing their profit margin. As you mentioned, in a senior role, put junior, and then we are good. And service delivery, the level of service delivery, it's a total fail. That is wrong on so many levels, and that is something which is constantly happening. And yeah, I'll rest my case. Everything is clear from that.
Yes. So it's it is said that in business there are very little things as dangerous as the correct answer to the wrong question. So if your question is, do I have a healthy margin? And the answer is yes. Great. Then, problem solved, we have our price. No. Because that was the correct answer to the completely wrong question. The correct question would be, does this price make sense in light of the value that we bring? And then maybe if the answer to that is not completely obvious, does this make a healthy margin for us? And it makes much more sense to realize that you're providing 200 for the client and say, okay, my costs are right now 23, but I could actually easily get them to like 40 and provide a really, really pleasant experience for the client. Mm-hmm. And the price at 100 would cover it much better than the price at 27 would cover the cost of 23. So everybody wins, right? You get to employ somebody else or get somebody else's services or products. The client gets a better experience and something more in the line of expectation if you're charging 100, and you actually get more profit. So everybody wins, right?
Yeah, you touched on a very interesting topic. We will definitely prepare in the future a dedicated session for that, and that is utilization. And utilization rate, especially in the companies, both in solopreneurship and companies which have employees, because quite often people and business owners are organizing their operations and everything not according to the optimal case and scenario. But we'll definitely touch on that later on. Very, very interesting thing to elaborate more and explain to the audience how they can fully optimize the system, align everything, and operate adequately. Yeah.
Align is a good word here.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. So in conclusion, first settle the question of, is what you're offering a good idea to buy? And not from your perspective. We've talked about this many times, right? See how this looks from their perspective. Ask if all else fails. And then pay attention to what they can and cannot perceive about your value, because the client never sees the whole of your value. Not when you're really good at what you do, right? They would have to be as good as you are to see all of the value. It's the expert's paradox, right? So the part that they do perceive how that looks and what price would make sense in light of that, and then possibly pay attention to the margin, and you will have a much better place to begin with and a much better experience with trying the price out in the market, right?
Mhm.
Cool. Anything to add?
No, practically we covered everything and open a new can of worms.
Oh, several. Let's go.
Several for sure.
Several. Let's go fishing now. Cool. So people, where can people find you, Philip?
People can find me on LinkedIn and also my agency page, Maui.agency, and my consulting practice page, philipzolota.com.
Right. People can find me on LinkedIn or fearless-pricing.com. People, happy to have opened the several cans of worms, and see you next time.
See you. Take care.